Tarsus Pharmaceuticals Incorporated applies proven science and new technology to revolutionize treatment for patients across several therapeutic categories, starting with eye care. Their lead product, Xdemvy, lotilaner ophthalmic solution 0.25%, is FDA approved in the United States for the treatment of Demodex blepharitis. Learn more at tarsisrx.com.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Collaborative Corner of the podcast, where you get to close your eyes and visualize what are they doing? What are they looking like? And I hope you're not doing it while you're driving. That's all I have to say. So as always, I always like to start our podcast by talking about things that are kind of new that just hit the market. And right now we have another presbyopia drop, which just got approved by the FDA. And this is a drop that it's a combination drop. Unlike the previous 3 drops that have been approved, this is carbachol and brimonidine tartrate, 2.75% and 0.1% respectively. The interesting name for this that's come out, and this is from Tenpoint, is called Yuvezzi. I don't know. I'm going to have to ask my guest what he thinks about that. Our guest, by the way, today, and speaking about clinical trials, is from the Vance Thompson clinic, if you shall, a world-renowned clinic. And more importantly, the fact that they're in the beautiful area of South Dakota, Sioux Falls. Beautiful, beautiful. It's Mitch Ibach. Mitch, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks, Mark. Happy to be here.
Thanks. Yeah. Most of you who don't realize is that Mitch is actually tied up in a corner. So yeah, he can say he's happy to be here. But Mitch, have you heard of Tenpoint's new drug, the Brimcol, the Brimon?
Yeah, I have, and I would have said it was Yuvezzi, but you had a stronger E on it than I did, and so yeah, I have heard of it. I think it's interesting, and I think we'll see what it does in the market, if it's a disruptor or just another player.
Yeah, let me, okay, you know what? We're on this topic here. You work in a co-management center. Do you actually see patients when they come back after surgery ever, or they go straight out to their optometrist?
Yeah, our goal is to have referring optometrists manage patients to the absolute highest level they can. I do have some patients who maybe have an endothelial keratoplasty or a more advanced glaucoma surgery that I do the follow-up care on, or maybe it's just a patient who doesn't have a primary care optometrist yet, and we're going to set that up as we go. But most patients are going back to their referring doctor.
Interesting. Okay, so here's this scenario. So riddle me this, Batman. You have a patient who comes in, they're geeked up, they're excited about, hearing about some of these new premium intraocular lenses. They see everybody's not wearing glasses anymore. They come in, they talk with you, and, for one reason or another, they're not a great candidate for maybe, a multifocal or even, an EDOF type lens. So then you talk to them about maybe enhancing their distance vision, and ultimately they end up with a monofocal lens. Do you at that point have a discussion about the fact that there is an opportunity to use presbyopic drops to enhance their close vision with their standard IOLs?
Yeah, I'm going to give you a two-part answer and try to answer it succinctly. For most patients who do a monofocal lens, I think the expectation is for most of them, they're going to wear glasses. They're happy in glasses. And so that's usually going to be more of a bifocal patient for me in glasses. But I have a lot of patients who maybe do an enhanced monofocal lens or an extended depth of focus lens, or we do kind of a mini monovision. And that is a patient where I'll talk about, hey, at certain times we can use these pharmaceutical drops to try to get a near vision boost. And so I have used them, with a cyclidine or lenses product. It has pseudophakic data, and so that reinforces it a little bit for me to use it more in those patients who are post cataract surgery, maybe hoping for more near, but I've used all of them in that capacity.
Yeah, I think it's interesting because I think it really holds. There's a duality to using a miotic when you have somebody who either has an IOL or even, a multifocal contact lens, is that by reducing, some of that peripheral blur, you're actually enhancing the quality of the vision, the dysphotopsia, and some of the other, side effects that are associated with these lenses. I get excited when patients are like, oh, I want to try something like that. Interestingly.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think for my practice, which is maybe a little bit different than some of the listeners on this call, and so I'm in an ODMD collaborative care tertiary referral center, and so I see a lot of surgical patients, and so the holy grail for me would be a presbyopia drop that can lessen rings and halos after a diffractive IOL. That's the one that I'm really looking for and excited for, and I don't think we're there yet. But I'll probably give this one a try in the same capacity.
Well, that brings us up to our next point. And for those of you, that are listening, thank you, by the way, appreciate you. Send all your comments, and, rate us, give us 5 stars, and tell your friends to subscribe. I don't really know what that does for us, Mitch, but I just, that sounds very podcasty, right?
Yeah, it does. It does. We're trying to get to 1 million followers.
Yeah, I mean, I know I'm pandering, but people, seriously, just hit the likes on there. But for those of you who are listening, it's like, for me, I mean, working in a practice that has been involved in clinical trials. In fact, gosh, I was part of the ICL, the implantable Collamer lens, now the Evo lens. We did the phase 2 study on those lenses. Excuse me. And we were putting them in patients that were, 2200 amblyopic or worse, just to see how they're doing. They were hyperopes. We were doing hyperopes back then. This is like 1998. And so it was always kind of exciting to be able to be on the forefront of what's new, to be able to then say to patients, it's like, well, you know what? We don't have it now, but I know, and our practice is involved, or I know colleagues that are involved with that, and get patients excited about what's in the future. You just described a therapeutic that you're hoping to see that's not here yet, that you get excited about. You guys are doing a lot of clinical trials. And in fact, I think some products have come out of your center. Can you give us a little bit of, some things to get excited about, or better yet, some really exciting stuff that came out of Vance Thompson Vision?
Yeah, I say this very proudly and hopefully doesn't sound boastful at all, but I think at Vance Thompson Vision, we are very proud of our research team. And so at any given time, we're between 10 to 20 FDA monitored clinical trials. We're very fortunate that almost all of the new premium implants are tested in one of our centers or go through clinical trials there. And so a common question that I get for patients who are on the cusp of, maybe I'm ready for cataract surgery, maybe I'm not, is should I just wait a year or should I wait 2 because there might be this new lens that's better than what we have right now? And I feel very lucky to be able to answer that question very confidently because I've seen kind of the results come through this. And so we do pharmaceutical drop trials. We do a lot of glaucoma trials. And so, glaucoma drug delivery is hot right now, whether it's fully dissolvable devices that stay in the eye, trying to lessen drop burden for patients, kind of the interventional glaucoma approach, which is a word that's, being beaten over all of our heads, but does have its place. And then
Wait, repeat that again. Interventional glaucoma.
interventional glaucoma. Yeah.
Is that how we're getting away from like saying like minimally invasive glaucoma? Surgery? Because we don't say surgery, we're just saying interventional glaucoma.
Yeah, interventional glaucoma is, came out of surgeons, but it's this idea of kind of being more proactive than reactive, intervening earlier in the disease process, and then taking a more procedural approach and trying to lessen drop burden for patients. And so in the glaucoma classes, that's a very buzzword, kind of popular word right now. And just how does it fit in optometry? I think as optometrists, we're trying to maybe consolidate meds or think about preservative-free meds. And so I think there's ways that you can make it fit, but ultimately kind of a procedural approach.
I think using the interventional is a way of basically saying we can do things earlier to maybe slow down the progression of the disease by intervening with. So instead of just saying, hey, let's go straight to surgery, I really like it. You're too young to know, but back in the day, they came up with a term for doing clear lens extractions. and the term they came up for was dysfunctional lens syndrome. I don't know
Oh,
if
no, I remember that.
oh,
Yep.
do you remember? Oh my
Yeah. Oh,
God.
yeah.
I mean, we're really trying to make that work where it's like, well, you're DLS1,
Yeah.
which is what you have a lens, but oh yeah, you're dysfunctional lens 2 or 3. No, I kind of like it though. I yeah, I think I'm gonna try to like adopt that. I'm gonna do some interventional something else. Yeah.
The
Inter-
interventional dry eye. There you go.
there you go. Yeah. I mean, I don't know what that would look like, but hey. But you guys have been doing kind of an interventional glaucoma for a while, haven't you?
Yeah, again, kind of back to just the lifeblood of our practice is optometric referrals. And so we want to handle what community ODs don't. And in a lot of cases, that leads to procedural approaches. And so a lot of patients that come into our practice aren't looking to try their second or third drop. I use a lot of glaucoma drops on patients, but patients referred in are usually referred in for a procedural approach. And so that is an important part of how we take care of glaucoma. And, I think foundationally, at least mindset wise for me, I like the idea of having a little bit more control of that patient's glaucoma treatment. It's putting more of it in my hands or my surgeon's hands, rather than the patient and the burden on their hands.
So you worked on something in particular with Dr. Birdall. Talk to me about that.
Yeah, this is, if you're listening, I would encourage the listeners to kind of close your eyes, let your mind wander,
Not if
because
you're
this,
driving, Mitch, not
yeah,
if you're
not if you're driving, but this is an outside of the box kind of thinking exercise here. And so think of atmospheric pressure. We're all pressurized beings. There's this big thumb of atmospheric pressure that's pushing down on all of us. It pushes on our body. Specifically, if we think about the eye, atmospheric pressure pushes pressure onto the eye, which translates to interocular pressure. And so if we can decouple the pressure from the atmosphere pushing on our eye, can we effectively lessen the IOP? So hopefully you're still with me. Dr. Burrell, my partner, actually came up with this while scuba diving. He was wondering, how is it that we can go 40, 60, 100 feet underwater and we don't explode? And it's because we're pressurized beings, and then we can decouple that pressure. And so then on land, how does that work? If we have a pair of goggles, almost looks like a pair of swim goggles, those goggles are attached to a tubing. The tubing's attached to a vacuum, or it could also be a pump where it applies pressure to the eye. This vacuum then can release pressure from the front part of the eye, effectively lowering the pressure inside of the eye. And so this has been 10 years in the making. It's went through FDA clinical trials. It's went through FDA panel and ultimately now has FDA approval. And these are real things. They're not just taglines, but this is something that lowers IOP in every patient every time. It was studied at the time of cataract surgery. Patients are in the operating room where they could have a cannula or get a true intracameral in the eye pressure. Patients wore goggles. They were able to do this through it. And so they could prove in real kind of patients in the eye, it was lowering the eye pressure. Think of it analogous to a CPAP, Mark. This is worn at night. We know that nocturnal IOP spikes are a real damage and concern to the optic nerve. And so patients are wearing this when we think that the eye and glaucoma is maybe most susceptible to change or damage. And so, analogous to a CPAP, patients wear these at night. They turn it on. You can dial in the pressure. And so we can set it. This works in combination with anything. And so we're not trying to necessarily replace having to do drops or replace having to do MIGs or SLT, but rather just use this in combination to keep some of the worst bad glaucoma patients, which commonly is patients with low pressure glaucoma, from going into big surgeries like tubes and traps.
So is this it's available right now?
This is available right now. You can prescribe it for patients. There's actually one of my mentors in the optometric space, a glaucoma guru, who is using this personally right now. I probably have prescribed it for 15 patients. So it's not a plethora of patients. Its label is for patients who have a eye pressure of less than 21. And so that could be treated, that could be untreated, but I think of this as really a solid option for patients with normal tension glaucoma. My grandma has worn these goggles. My grandma has pretty advanced glaucoma. And so I think, continuing to carve out its space, but hoping we're going to see more and more of this is just being an opportunity for patients who have bad glaucoma.
So what's the name of the device?
It's called OPAP. So ocular pressure adjusting pump, OPAP.
OPAP,
Uh,
OPAP. Gotcha.
yep.
So how would you prescribe it then?
Yeah. So if you check physics, so FSYX, after physics, this is kind of the math behind OPAP. And you Google that and OPAP, OPAP. That's how you would find it. It's coming. This is a much different kind of prescribing mentality for glaucoma. And so there's a company behind it. The company has nurses, they have a fitting team. And so they're going to kind of concierge this with the patient. Patient would get a pair of goggles. Those are worn for a time. They're replaceable. You get a pump, that's replaceable. And so this will kind of go down the durable medical equipment or DME pathway. But Graymont, the team, is how you do it. And so happy to have you share kind of my email if someone has the patient they think might be right, and I can connect you to the right people.
It's awesome. Now, is it portable? So if you're traveling or if you're going out and doing stuff, I mean, how
Yeah,
does that?
it is portable in kind of a similar fashion to how your CPAP is portable. Patients, if they really need it, will pack that and it goes on vacation with them. It's a small device, has potential to be able to track wear time and compliance, and so there might be some data that comes out for that as well. Yeah.
That sounds great. Okay, what else? What else you got coming out of there?
I think one of the other things that we're really excited on from a research front is patients with Fuchs dystrophy and cultured endothelial cells. Currently the standard is we do a DMEC or a DSEC, these partial thickness cornea transplants. They work very, very well, but it's currently one donor to one recipient. Cultured endothelial cells really has the goal of being able to take the donor graft, kind of strip it, grow these cells in cultures, almost stem cells, if you will, and then be able to transplant those cells into multiple recipients. And so I think that could be really powerful, not only here in the US, but maybe in other countries where there is not the supply and demand of tissue that we have here in the US.
Yeah, that sounds exciting. I mean, I remember back in the day and we were excited to get to use like a femtosecond laser to work on, corneal, so we don't have to do a full corneal transplants, PKP. It was exciting. And that stuff came, a lot of those things came out of, just like these think laboratories, especially, Lee Nordan in San Diego, who's like a little mad scientist. He's actually the ophthalmologist who put together the group that brought Lumify and some other exciting stuff. And I think he brought a cyclidine, but he was also forefront with the femtosecond laser. So a lot of this stuff comes out of practices like yourself, just like thinking about how, we can make things better, but then partnering with industry is kind of exciting. What do you do, Mitch? What do you do when you're working on a product and you just feel like it's just not working? Do you feel bad? Do you just like, what do you do?
Yeah, it's really difficult. I think the company behind the FDA clinical trial often knows it's not going super well too. And so they're usually the ones behind this that says, okay, we're going to realign, or we're going to shift this project, or maybe the project goes away. We also do some investigator initiated trials, or trials after something gets FDA approved. And you don't always find what you're looking for, frankly. And so that's difficult on what you do with it. Ultimately, we try to use it to take better care of patients. And so sometimes it means we do less of something.
Yeah, I think for our colleagues, I think part of it, they don't realize that it's like the amount of work that goes into bringing a drug to market and the expense. And then when it does come to market though, because oftentimes, you're limited to who you're evaluating these patients on, Do you feel that some of these patients that come in for clinical trials are just like professional clinical trial people, where it's just like they almost kind of know how to game the system? Because I bring this up and I say because it's like sometimes you look at the adverse events, and the percentage of the adverse events are always they seem lower than like the patients you see in your practice, which which always makes me scratch my head. But I also think that there's different ways of eliciting an adverse event. And so it's like on one hand, I'm like, are these people gaming the system, or is it more just a matter of how we're gaining, asking the questions of these patients?
Yeah, two thoughts there. One, I think you said something really important, and I'm going to double down on it. The amount of work that it takes and dollars that it takes to go through clinical trials is enormous. And so, coming out of school, I used to kind of be jaded if a paper that I read or a study that I read was sponsored by a company. I mean, it is so much work, and no one's trying to trick you. And so I look at those papers much differently now, and have a much, I think, clearer lens that I look through them. Second, in a lot of the FDA clinical trials, there's pretty strict guidelines and these sheets that you have to read and kind of criteria that you go on, but also the N is really large in most of these trials. And so when you see a big trial and the adverse events is lower than you see in clinical practice, I'll often think back, well, maybe I've only tried this on 3 patients. And so if I've gotten 2 out of 3, it's just maybe not a big enough N to compare it back to the clinical trial.
I feel, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel oftentimes the adverse events are highlighted by maybe competitive companies, you know, as opposed to them being really, patient driven. And what I mean by that is that I think most of our colleagues don't even realize, oh, do you know that the percentage of, installation site discomfort was like 30% with this drop? And it's like, oh, and they just, it's just more competitiveness. It's almost kind of like, what's that hockey show that everybody's watching right now? Um, oh, it'll come to me in a second. You know, but it's like when you're in the trials, you either ask a patient, you'll say, are you experiencing any adverse events? No. Or they'll come in and say, oh, it burned a little bit when I put it in. Okay. Hence, it becomes a little bit of installation site discomfort. And so I oftentimes look at when those, especially patients that are complaining about some of these side effects, I'm like, who got to them? Who got to
Yeah.
them? You know?
Yeah. I think the highlight from that is what you see on, the indications and important safety information is going to be much different than you hear in the marketing program or what you see in a trade journal.
Yeah, totally. So I want to just quick turn, make a 90-year turn while I got you here. We're bumping up on our time. And I could sit here and talk about, being in and around clinical trials because I think it's so important for our profession to be forward thinking, is not always just kind of like, be stuck in what you're doing, is, take those sea changes and incorporate them. And where they're not there right now, is to be able to tell a patient, hey, soon we'll have that. You guys have a lot of opportunities in your practices. Do you work with lasers in South Dakota?
Yes. So South Dakota got optometric scope expansion coming up on 2 years ago now. And so we do have laser privileges on South Dakota. It's YAG lasers for YAG capsulotomies and SLT for glaucoma.
Right. And do you feel that is within your scope of practice? Do you feel that's within your, optometric acumen, that's easily integrated into the practice?
Yeah, I'm going to credit South Dakota and the process that I think we went through. Our scope expansion law is a little bit different, and I think it was a pretty collaborative effort in the end. And we have a little bit stricter training. And I think in the end, a higher level of training to feel more confident when you're doing these procedures is a win for our patients. And so I think if you just have the patient in kind of front of you in mind, it is a good thing to have maybe a little bit more rigorous training. We also have some proctored eyes where someone who can perform these procedures has went through the training is then training the next person. So it's kind of a train the trainer type idea in the end.
Nice. So, I mean, You know, it's interesting. I mean, I've been practicing for a long time, and I look at things, especially like yak lasers or SLT, and now with, you know, Epi-on cross-linking, which, you know, has been approved, that Glaukos is bringing to market. I look at these procedures and feel like these are things that we collectively should be advocating for our colleagues to be able to do. And so it's always gratifying when I talk to somebody who's in a state where they're actually doing it. Um, because I don't know, kind of look up to you guys.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know. It's pretty cool. But Mitch, anything else you want to leave our listeners with? You know, things that you're kind of looking over the horizon, maybe how you coach this with patients when they don't have something there and you can say, hey, you know, hang in there. Or if they've heard about something exciting and you're like, no, it's a dog, don't do that. What do you got? Anything?
What I'm excited about right now is we're currently going through the process of selecting residents for next year. And so we have 2 optometric residents in our practice. We have a cornea glaucoma fellow. And so the ability to train others and kind of give back, as well as put more, hopefully, really high quality eye care providers into communities is a big thing for me. And then second, I think with clinical trials, it's someone has to go through that clinical trial to help advance medicine, research, and care for future patients. And so I'm really thankful for the patients who put their trust in us and say, yes, I'm willing to take this chance. I'm willing to be in the control group, possibly to help advance medicine for future patients.
Love that. Love that. Keep your eyes forward, but also don't forget about your backside. Not really sure if that made sense. It did in my head, but Mitch, appreciate it. Appreciate your time. Get back to your family. Everybody, thanks for listening to our little corner of the world over here, collaborative corner, where we're hopefully gonna get you guys excited about just, you know, working in and within optometry. Until next time, take care, everybody.